I'm joined here today with my frequent co-host and my good friend, Serp Kerp, and we're going to talk about maybe a bit about 2021 in review, and talk about what's going to be in store for 2021. Please go check out my friend Serp's channel. He's been doing some really good content lately. He did a really good summary of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict.
Thank you. Can you hear me right now?
I can hear you. Just if the chat can say if you're coming in all right.
I just wanted to say before we start this, a friend of ours, and I was on his podcast, Night Aaron, passed away recently. So please pray for him.
Oh, they're saying they can't hear you.
Okay,
Although I can see
you
your
can hear
audio.
me.
Oh, okay, now they can hear you. Okay. Yeah, so please play for Knight Errant Soul. He passed away. It's very tragic.
He
Um,
ran the podcast in Taberna alongside Classical Theist.
yeah, it's I don't know what information about him is available publicly, so I don't want to do any docs, but it's just tragic, and we'll leave it at
Yes.
that, I guess. So, anyways, 2021. It's fucking. I don't know. I think 2021 really kind of summarizes how things have been going. Because it was kind of a year where nothing happened and everything happened, if you know what I mean.
I mean, so I think you're generally more. Well, we have a different way of viewing our optimism versus pessimism. So I was gonna say generally you're more optimistic. I just kind of view um, a lot of stuff just kind of from like this lens of Tainter and John Michael Greer, Joseph Tainter, that is, and that we're in a slow collapse or like a decline that's taking the course of decades, and that basically every year is going to be slightly worse than the last year.
Right. Yeah, I just mean like we had some stuff like we almost. They claim it's a coup. I don't know how the fucking anyway. It could have been a coup, but we almost had American democracy overthrown by 9/11 times a thousand. We had like a plague, but the plague was just really lame and G-slur and didn't really go anywhere. We almost had economic collapse, but then we didn't. I just feel like a bunch of stuff almost happened this year and then didn't happen. And so it was just kind of a nothing burger.
I mean, you had your guys' election, which was a nothing poutine.
That's true. I mean, you had that. You had 9/11 times a thousand. You had COVID. What else even happened this year?
Was Armenia Azerbaijan last year or this year?
I don't even remember. I find everything kind of blends together at this point.
You have the Tigray War. Um, so there was supposed to be a coup in
Yes, that was
Brazil.
this year.
So yeah, so there's the Azerbaijan Armenia War, which happened after a colored revolution in Armenia caused the Russians to remove their influence and support for Armenia. And then immediately Turkey allied with Azerbaijan, gave them a ludicrous amount of weapons, and Azerbaijan curb stomped Armenia after 25 years.
Didn't Armenia won the previous war, right? Because Russia armed them.
Yes. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with how they won the last
I'd
war.
imagine Russia armed them. I'm just gonna guess.
But they had a colored revolution, and that's kind of a key thing. And that Erdogan is kind of like he's kind of moving in towards like
Pan-Turanism.
yeah, he's kind of seen that America's declining, and that now he's like, oh wait, we used to be a world power. Why don't we make that a thing again?
I mean, they do have the population. Their population's large enough to be a great power.
Well, they're also the most educated people in all of the Middle East and the Balkans at the same time.
Right.
and that they have the second most powerful military conventionally in Europe
After Germany or France?
after Russia.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if we were counting Russia.
Either Russia or France, then Turkey, or Russia, Turkey, France.
I think in terms of number of soldiers, it's definitely the second largest.
Mm-hmm.
Um. So yeah, that happened. There was the war. I'm trying to remember. Uh,
The
Serps.
U.S. lost the Afghan war.
Serp. Someone wants me to go to Montana and go cryptid hunting with you on a live stream.
I mean, we could do that, but we might end up being killed by Indian tribes.
Yeah, that does sound kind of fun, though. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, if you want to visit Montana, and then we could wear masks and then like walk around Glacier and see if we can find some Bigfoot. I guess we could do that.
Yeah.
Go on as Jamie Tons and it'll happen.
Okay. So yeah. So there was that war. There was the U.S. failure in Afghanistan. Now, this one I felt the narrative was there was kind of an interesting narrative on this one because you had a lot of people who were were cheering for the Taliban, which I honestly kind of thought was in bad taste. I mean, you can call me a cuck for thinking that. But I think it was optically really bad um, when people were doing that. But because some people were saying, well, you can't really be that mad about Joe because he finally ended the thing in Afghanistan.
Here's the thing about it: is he ended it like it's over. In the way that he ended it was a complete disaster, but at the same time, it is over.
Well, I mean, as an international, as a great power, really what's more important than uh, your actual military power is your word and your reputation. And when you just get utterly humiliated like that, it just destroys your credibility and no one takes you seriously. And that's more important than I think any actual military force. Would you agree with
Mm-hmm.
me on that? That it was like a massive. Like if I and I will talk about Russia and Ukraine, but if I was Russia and I saw that happen, I'd be more certain that America wouldn't do shit if I invaded Ukraine because of how
Yes.
pathetic that was.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare it to Vietnam, the U.S. left Vietnam, and then Vietnam continued for 2.5 years before they got conquered by the North.
Right. I mean,
Afghanistan collapsed before all the soldiers were able to withdraw.
people point to that thing in Saigon, but that was just the remaining diplomatic personnel. Um,
And like a lot of South Vietnamese people, that they were just really lucky they got evacuated.
yeah, it was the vast majority of U.S. forces had been out for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But like the South Vietnamese fought on for 2 years after America left. Like the Afghans like the Afghan Republican Army lost while the US was still withdrawing and was routed. And then the US got besieged within its own airport while the entire country had already fallen.
didn't they lose in 2 months or something? I might be slightly exaggerating.
I think it was like a month and a half.
Yeah, so a lot of the last offensive of the North Vietnamese was a complete shit show for the South. To be fair to the South, we don't know how it would have gone if they hadn't have run out of fuel and ammo. Because from my understanding, they were down to 10 rounds a day or something by the end, and they had to abandon most of their
Well, they
equipment.
had like M1 Grands because they ran out of M16 ammo and stuff.
So we don't really know what could have happened if they were adequately provisioned, but yeah, it was just kind of a mess in terms of their performance. But there was still something of a fight, I think, for Saigon. Um,
Tens of thousands of South Vietnamese fought and died in like during its last hopelessness. and the military was actively trying to like create a redoubt or like defend. It wasn't like entire field armies weren't surrendering to the North Vietnamese en masse or joining them.
I think the successor govern like so the last actually it's kind of a cool story. So the last president was just sitting with his cabinet at on I think it was the doorstep of the presidential palace. And when the North Vietnamese commander came here, they're like, "We were waiting for you so we could surrender." Um,
Mhm.
and then the guy was like, "You're in no position to surrender. Your state doesn't exist anymore." Or something. But I'll give the second last president I think fled like a pussy, but the very last president like stayed and uh like surrendered like a man. I think it was a pussy move on behalf of I forget what the Afghan president was who just ran away like a
Didn't he
bitch.
flee to Uzbekistan or something?
Yeah, apparently with a lot of the country's gold reserves.
Like Marcos in the Philippines.
Yeah, I just think it's a real pussy move. Like you want to be the big man, you want to like run Afghanistan, and you just
Vietnam's kind of a really weird thing because it's like it was a disaster, but it like I still like am sympathetic to the war.
it's because there was actually a rival government.
Well, I mean, like do we still understand why we invaded the Iraq? Like
No, there's no
like do
idea.
we understand that to this day? Like at least with Vietnam, like it's a quagmire or like it's a false hope, but like communism's bad. I don't like communism.
So somebody says some of the Vietnamese hated communism and were prepared to fight it. No one in Afghanistan hates Islam. I mean, it was called the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. I mean, and it was just extremely corrupt. I'd imagine for the average Afghan, like all the feminist shit they tried to bring in and like all that stuff just really pissed off the average person. Like, I don't
Well,
mean
the
like,
government didn't. So something you have to imagine is that the president of the the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, he was called the mayor of Kabul, and he had no power outside of Kabul. And that, like throughout the entire war, it was unclear if Al Qaeda controlled towns or if the government controlled towns, because the towns would like Al Qaeda would be in control of towns, and then the towns would just like they would be in communication with the government.
yeah, I think like they would be administered by the Taliban, but whenever the government troops would show up, they'd put up a flag and be like, no, we're totally on your side. But yeah, no one gave a shit about the Islamic Republic. I mean, the Taliban, you can say what you will, but they're at least very disciplined. And they have very high morale, even if they are kind of like they are fanatics. But yeah, because there was legitimately a lot of South Vietnamese who didn't want their country to be communist. Just like there was a lot of South Koreans who didn't want their country to be communist. But I don't know. Like I said, um, I guess there was kind of like three ways this could have ended. A, the U.S. pulls out, the Islamic Republic lasts for another year or two, then collapses, and that would probably have been the best case scenario. Two, the U.S. completely gets out and then it collapses, and three, the is what happened. It's just a massive blow to U.S. prestige. Do you think it's emboldened China and Russia?
I mean, that's what we're waiting to see.
Right.
It's pretty clear that both Russia and China are testing the waters in Ukraine and Taiwan. And do you want to get to the first prediction of the year?
Yeah, so I brought up a world map. So I was thinking maybe what we could do is just go counterclockwise from North America to bring some sort of order to it. Or do you want to start with Russia and move clockwise? Or
Oh, yeah. So the president of Ukraine, Zelensky's been like a crybaby saying that Russia's going to invade at any second now
didn't Russia
since like
support him?
March. Uh, No. He has like this. So he was an actor that was chosen by an oligarch that ran his show,
Because
and
I
then he was like advertised basically to the state of Ukraine
because
to
I
be
thought
voted
the
for
Russian
president.
government had endorsed him actually, um, as opposed to whoever he was running against. But wasn't he the only candidate to campaign in Russian as well as Ukrainian?
I'd have to go back.
So I remember
I think
something
he's
that effect.
definitely more. I don't. He's not a far west. He's not a Western Ukrainian chauvinist.
Right, so he's complaining that Russia's going to invade. Has Russia made any actual indications that it's going to invade?
So I don't know how long it's been, but a few weeks ago, Russia gave like an ultimatum on Eastern Europe, basically to the United States, which was that NATO should not expand eastward, and U.S. troops should not be stationed in NATO troops or in NATO countries east of Germany.
Didn't so was there enough formal agreement between the US and Russia that NATO would not expand to former Warsaw Pact countries?
Yes,
Okay, so that was a former. Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a formal agreement or if that was like a meme or something or
I
what.
mean it was understood by Gorbachev during the withdrawal of Soviet
That
troops
it would
out of East
stay a
Germany.
like a buffer zone.
Hmm.
I mean, but yeah, the US kind of immediately went back on that. Or I guess it
Not.
took a little
It
while.
waited until Clinton was president.
Right.
Bush didn't go back on it, and it wasn't really until like the Serbian War.
So Zelensky, I think you said, sorry, he's the president, right?
Yeah, Zelensky's the
So
president of
he's a
Ukraine.
Western puppet. Is he a Western puppet or
He's a puppet of an oligarch. I can't. So a lot of people said like, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce these names. Um, like I know a lot of what I've read. But yeah, he's a puppet of an oligarch, but he's constantly bemoaning like how Russia's going to invade at any second. So like a lot of this stuff about like an imminent war with Russia and Ukraine is pretty much just him. And it seems like he's losing a lot of people have said he's losing support of oligarchs and that this is basically fear mongering to try and keep like control.
right? So he wasn't. So I think the other candidate was more of a Western puppet, and he's the oligarch puppet who's pro-West, but not as much so. Maybe I mean Ukrainian politics are really hard to kind of figure out, especially since they banned all the pro-Russia parties,
Mm-hmm.
so they can't even run anymore. Um, has there been any actual movement on the border, or is it all just like something he's bitching about?
So there are more troops stationed outside of Ukraine than previously.
Right. But that night might not necessarily
Here's the
mean
thing
anything.
about Russia and Ukraine, and maybe Russia will invade or whatever, but if you look at Putin's interventions in other countries, it's always something that's not proactive. It's always in reaction to something that happened.
It's normally
He's
due to
not
a
he's a
color
very
revolution.
conservative. Well, okay, so like he intervened in the Syrian war, right? That was after like Bashir al-Assad's government was like on its last leg and ISIS had invaded Iraq and like started genociding Shias and Christians. Like that was like pretty far gone. Or like when there was the color revolution
Yeah,
Euro
wasn't
made in
ISIS on the
2015,
verge of overthrowing both the Afghan and the Syrian government? When,
Iraqi and Syrian. Yeah.
yeah, I feel that was kind of when the tide started to turn back in Assad's favor, um, and ISIS more or less got stopped.
Hmm.
So there
But I
was,
mean,
yeah.
Georgia, that was when Georgia tried to reestablish control of Abkhazia and South Odessa. Mendeleev invaded Georgia when he was prime minister.
Wasn't there
And then,
also a colored revolution that preceded that?
yeah, I don't remember what time the Rose Revolution was, though.
Let me look it up. Rose Revolution was
It was 5
2003.
years before.
Right. No, it was 3 years before, I think. Oh no, sorry, it was an ongoing
Georgia
thing.
was 2008.
Okay, but there was like other stuff leading up to it, I think. Yeah, there was like some terrorist attacks and stuff like that leading up to the war. Well, the invasion of Ukraine was response to Euromadden. Um, so has there been multiple attempt? There was an attempted color revolution in Belarus this year, wasn't there?
There's been so many of them, though.
Wasn't there one last year too? It seems like they happen on a very regular basis now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, but I mean, like, so the Chechen War happened after the invasion of Dagestan, and then the Russo-Georgian War happened after the invasion of Abkhazia and
Abkhazia, I
South
think it's
Odessa,
pronounced.
Abkhazia, sorry, and then Ukraine happened after the Euromaidan Revolution, and then Syria happened when ISIS was on the brink of like conquering Iraq and Syria. So all of these are very in response. Russia's not very proactive with its foreign policy. It's generally pretty conservative.
I mean, the Eurasian Union is like the most tepid. Like they don't really seem to be going anywhere with it. I don't know if that's just laziness or what.
Most of those countries are still relatively sovereign.
Right. It just
They
doesn't
don't want
seem
to give up their power.
right. Um, I think the only countries that are really pro it is Belarus and Kazakhstan.
Mhm.
I think are the most pro.
You
But
have huge Russian minorities
yeah, but I
and are
think
landlocked.
but weren't they also the two most against the breakup of the Soviet Union?
Mhm.
Well, I mean they were led in well, one's still led by the guy who was against it, and the other one was led by the guy who was against it. Um, so I don't know. Maybe okay. So what might happen in Ukraine is, do you think there's a chance that Zelensky will pull something like he'll try to invade the Donbass or something like that, and Russia will react to that?
I know if Russia was proactive, it's a really good time because Turkey's the country that's going to most defend Ukraine or give it aid. So, like, Turkey's economy is in a full scale collapse. Poland wants to help Ukraine. There's the Belarusian Poland um, border conflict kind of thing. Then the United States is in like an economic meltdown, plus COVID's happening, and then the United States lost the Afghan war. There's going to be a energy crisis in Europe with natural gas, and they depend upon Russia for that natural gas. So, generally speaking, Russia does have a pretty good situation to invade and take the Russophone parts of Ukraine. Now, whether they will or not, I don't think so because generally they're proactive, and a big thing is since 2014 the Russian economy is in pretty bad stagnation or recession in all those years, and that Putin has lost popularity because of that. He was very popular when the economy was growing. I think that he just wants the economy to grow, and that I don't think that NATO would expand into Ukraine because that's just a powder keg because there's still an active war there. And if they were going to actively expand into the Ukraine, he could just start up the war in Donbass again, because that would prevent. I don't think NATO wants to expand in any country that has compromised borders. Basically,
Right. So yeah, I think really Russia won't do anything unless the US, the EU, or the Ukraine does something. But that's quite possible because I mean, as we've discussed in the past, Biden is we have no idea what the fuck he's gonna do. Like, there's the narrative he's weak, but I could see him just ordering something crazy to try to prove that he's a big man or something like that.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that mostly covers the Ukraine. Maybe let's move on to Europe.
Do you
Uh,
want to talk about the French election?
I don't see. I think all the people memeing that Macron's gonna lose are just memeing.
Zemmour is like a hero, and I love him with the to the bottom of my heart. But him and Le Pen are canceling each other out, and that's probably going to cause, um, Valerie Percy to go against
Now,
Macron.
would she maybe win by virtue of being the center right candidate, so she'll get support?
Well, she's to the right of Macron. He's
No,
to the
that's what
right
I
of.
mean.
He's like to the right of most de Gaullism since de Gaulle, because she's against immigration. Like Pearly, she's outspokenly against immigration, which is for the Republicans. I mean, she's still like the whole entire political system of France is shifting to the right.
Yeah, because I feel like she might actually be able to beat Macron. Let me see if there's
Mm-hmm.
any runoff polls. But she would have the support of the far right and the center right. And I think that was what fucked Le Pen last time was a lot of the Republicans just voted for Macron or stayed home because they
Mm-hmm.
refused to hold their nose and vote for her.
Um, Le Pen is also like I don't like her. Like she's definitely gone against her father.
Has she shifted to the left or something?
Yes.
So, looking at it, um, so the most recent polls, Le Pen is 44, Macron is 56. It's basically it's closer. It's about 3 to 4 points between the Republican candidate and Macron, and Zamora is down 30, like 25 to 30 points. Um,
Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, Zemmour is like a dream candidate, but Le Pen is still there and siphoning his support.
I think my prediction is I think the Republicans might win, but do you think there's much election rigging that goes on in uh
I'm not. I don't know exactly. I know that there is a lot of it in French Guyana, like
right?
hundreds of thousands of votes in French Guyana. As far as like the city of Paris or Marseille, like in the United States, I don't know exactly how it works out.
Mm-hmm.
Marseille, sorry.
Um, let's see here. Sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought there for a minute. Um, but I think Macron will probably win, and I think Macron has kind of exposed how fucked the like Fifth Republic is because the way their electoral system works. There's really no way to remove him from power, and a large portion of the population just despise him. But there's basically nothing they can do about it. So, like I
Well,
said, it's just a mess.
Zorro 9129, they are canceling each other because they one of them would need to be in second place for them to gain in the runoff. But if the Republican candidate is in second place, then they're canceling each other out because if you combine their two votes, they would be the single highest block.
You mean if you combine the Republican and then the two far right candidates?
Well, if you combine the two far right candidates, they're higher than Macron.
Yeah. Um.
So,
Right. Yeah, because looking at it, let me just look at
like,
it again.
if you combine both of them together, they would have the majority. But
Uh.
that's also that who knows, because the left is going to vote for Macron, but who knows how much of the left is left.
Well, the left isn't really running a candidate other than Melancon, but he has like a 0% chance of making it to the runoff.
Well, Melancon is stated that he wants to abolish the Fifth Republic.
Right. Some people are asking if the French election matters. I actually think it does, because I think if a Western European country is going to collapse into civil war or a military coup, I think it's France is by far the most likely.
France is the most powerful country in Western Europe militarily, and if France was taking control of a non-globalist, so this would include Mélenchon as well. If Zemmour, Mélenchon, or Le Pen took over France, NATO could collapse as well as the EU.
Um, Someone says on the grand scale of things. So no, but I think France is, and I've said this repeatedly, has the strongest far right and far left movement in Europe. So I could see like there being actual like I don't know about death squads, but I could see the army attempting a coup or
I
there
think that the Fifth Republic is ultimately doomed and that there will be a coup.
or like the yellow vests going way up. I mean, we have no idea what happened with the yellow vests. Like they could have killed thousands of people. We really have no idea, right?
The government killed the Yellow Vest? I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't. Wasn't there something where like they brought in EU troops to put them down?
Yeah, they like declared them terrorists, but I don't know if they like went. They didn't go Tiananmen Square on them.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So I could see that like coming back, especially if Macron wins again. I mean, I can't really think of another example of a leader that's faced that level of widespread national opposition and still won re-election.
Yeah, he's. I mean, if he wins, he's. What's he going to win?
Also, I think his party dominates Congress or whatever
Mhm.
they call it, the National Assembly.
Basically, like if this, just keep watching every 5 years with France. Something eventually is going to go haywire, and France is going to collapse.
Yeah. Let's see here. Britain actually see. I'm kind of surprised by how Britain's been the last year. Because haven't they been the least bad on COVID lockdowns?
I'm not that well informed on it.
Because from my understanding, they're not. They're one of the countries that's not doing further lockdowns with like Omicron and some of the other stuff that's happening. I know I have a
I
number of
know
British
that
friends, but
I know that the left is like calling Boris Johnson Hitler and stuff. And like they're going like to like Trump levels of like insanity against him. But
the agnostic Jew,
is he Jewish?
I think he is.
I thought he was like part Turkish or something weird.
I'm pretty sure. Let me just see here. Um, at least partially. I think he's part Russian Jewish. Let's see here. So there's that. There's that. I kind of feel like if if the UK for the foreseeable future is just going to be run by the what's it called again?
The
The
Tories?
Yeah, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, that's like a situation where I actually consider accelerationism.
Okay, Jolly Crocodile claims I'm just asking you leading questions. Um, so I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about Western Europe that I haven't pushed upon you?
So I think that the government is going to collapse in Israel.
I like how I said Western Europe and you just immediately went to Israel. So yeah, give me your thoughts on Israel.
The government, the pan, I don't know what was anyway, the pan coalition that exists isn't very strong. The coalition against Netanyahu. Isn't
Let
it Yakud?
Yeah, let me see because it was some really fucking bizarre coalition that came to power. Let's see here. So yeah, it's Yeshid. Um, we have a bunch of a bunch of like left wing parties and then a couple far right parties. I think.
Isn't there an Arab party in coalition with them?
Yes, and an Arab party.
I don't. I feel like the far right parties are going to collapse the coalition before they can swap with the left wing parties, and there'll be another election pretty soon.
Yeah, there's Yamina, which is a far right. Um, well, it's part Jewish home and part another thing. So let's see here. Who else is in this coalition? Okay, so yeah, there's like the far right ultra nationalist parties. I think the secular far right parties and the liberal parties, which is a bizarre coalition to say the least.
It's not going to last very long, and then there's going to be a new election.
Well, you can't really create a coherent coalition without Likud. Like Likud and then the like center left would probably make more sense, but
I mean, on the global stage, isn't Likud comparatively far right for democracies?
yes. Israel's just weird. So, I don't know, basically cuz Israel's had I think what like 4 elections in the last 3 years or something like that.
Their political system is the most similar to the Dutch, isn't it? They have like extremely high, not high participation, but they have a high amount of parties, and that they have a very low threshold to be a part of the parliament.
Right. Um but yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, on one hand you could have I guess no. Sorry, what I mean is if they have another election, it's not going to resolve anything. They're just going to basically endlessly have elections, and nothing's going to happen.
I mean,
So
eventually, either there's going to be a permanent majority of like the far right, or there's going to be a coup. The left
yeah,
wing parties are going to continuously lose power.
yeah. The issue is the far right is divided between secularist and religious parties. So I'm not really sure, but I mean, Israel's on the 4th dose of the vaccine at the moment.
We switched to COVID now.
Sure, we can switch to COVID. I was just saying, I when you talked about the country collapsing, that's what I thought you were talking about was how bad COVID is there.
I think that COVID's going to leave the news cycle. I mean, just today, aren't they acknowledging that the transformer is not as dangerous as they said it was before?
I think so. So, yeah, okay. So in Canada,
Dr. Fauci, all indications point to the transformer causing less severe COVID-19 infections.
so do you think what'll happen now is everyone will just get it and then everyone will be immune? And it'll be the mild version that doesn't really kill anybody?
But I think that they're just gonna. I think that they know that the Democrats will lose in a landslide if they keep up on it. So I think that they're going to try and abandon it.
I think, and this is just based on Canada, I think what they're going to do is we're going to just continue the cycle of lockdown, open, and try to keep the economy functioning to the bare minimum that it can. Or just the bare minimum of economic activity that will allow the government to continue functioning, and that's it's just going to be like that indefinitely. Do any states even still have lockdowns in the U.S.?
I don't know.
I think Canada is unusually strict compared to a lot of places.
Yeah, I could see Canada doing it until the end of time, to be honest. I'm sorry to say.
Kittens Roar says Canada will drag this on longer than any other country. It kept the libs in power, and the conservatives got the greedy boomers. Libs got fear porn, boomers get healthcare pension porn. Yeah, I guess so. Sorry. So in the U.S., what? Sorry, what? I'm trying to not ask you yes/no questions. So you think it's just going to, I guess, fade into the background?
I mean, I live in Montana and it's already petered out into the background. So I think as it moves out from the redder states into the purple states and the bluer states, it's just kind of petering out and people are ignoring it.
Although once again, you do live in like one of the reddest, most rural states in the union. So
Yes. But I think like in pretty much outside of all the major cities on the coast, everybody just kind of ignores it.
yeah. Jolly Crocodile asks, "What do lockdowns even mean?" Literally every store and restaurant operates like normal. Some stores did
Well, America's like most severe lockdowns didn't even approach like Canada's mild ones.
Because I know in Canada we still have restricted capacity. You need to show a vaccine passport if you want to eat at a restaurant. See a movie. A lot of companies require them. If you work for the government, you need one. I don't think they've implemented it for transit just yet, but I'm sure that's coming in the near future. We all still have mandatory masks. Uh, and then there's like some other stuff, limited capacity, things like that. Like as I said,
Nobody wears a mask in all of Montana except for if the company they work for forces them to. I mean, they never attempted limited capacity on something like movie theaters. I've been to multiple heavy metal concerts where not a single person was wearing a mask.
so all of those in Canada require two vaccines. I'm sure they'll require three vaccines very soon. Also, you need to have, even if you want to eat outside at a restaurant, you need to have two vaccines if you want to do that. So we're up to the highest COVID numbers we've ever had in Ontario. It's over 10,000 a day now. So, but there hasn't been a full-on lockdown quite yet. So I don't really know if there's going to be another full lockdown or what's even happening at this point. They all the school children have to have vax. I think they vaccinated the school children now. So
Mm-hmm. Are people still dying of it so the vaccine isn't working?
Very few.
People just getting infected, or people? Okay, so the vaccine is working then.
So, okay, so here's the thing. Okay, so I've taken a lot of shit over this. When we got max vaccinations in Ontario, it did seem to work on the existing variants. So we reopened most of the province, but as we reopened, the case counts went way, way down. And it was getting to the point where we were going to start getting rid of uh, we were going to start getting rid of even mask laws, and it was basically going away. And then Omicron hit, and that seems to just go through the vaccine. But once again, it's such a nebulous concept. So it's like people have it, but what does having it even mean? Because a lot of people are uh, like have it asymptomatically, or it's just a cold, or it's just the flu, or what. So there's always the argument that, like, okay, so a lot of people are getting it, but it would be a lot more people would be in fatal or really bad shape if they didn't get the vaccine. So it's I don't really know. Um, if it does anything, how much it does. I don't know. What's maybe just give your take on the whole vaccine thing.
Oh lordy, good thing you're deep in this video. Um, I think the vaccines cause people to have heart attacks. Uh, so like, it's warranted to be suspicious of the vaccine,
Do you
but at the
mean it's
same
deep in the
time,
video because of what I said, or because of what you said? Because the audience probably agrees with you way more than me. So,
oh no, I meant so this doesn't get taken down on YouTube.
oh, okay.
Um, so the vaccines cause a lot of people to have heart attacks. There's disproportionate amounts of people, especially young people, having heart attacks. Um, so if you're afraid of having a heart attack, you're vindicated not taking the vaccine. Um, if you're over 50 or you have severe conditions, though, it might be more likely that you would die of COVID than having a heart attack. So if somebody's going to take a vaccine, I'm just going to say, go ahead, take a vaccine. And certain people that are in their 60s and have, you know, severe conditions, I would say they probably should take the vaccine because it will be more likely that they'll die of COVID than a heart attack from getting the vaccine. Um, Now, do the vaccines work? Somewhat. They appear to be leaky, and COVID is going to be a yearly thing indefinitely into the future forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I admit I need to look into it because. So the thing is, and once again, people are going to get angry at me for this, but the anti-vaxxers kind of cry wolf on everything. So they say that like
Well, I
hundreds of
mean, for most of the people that criticize the vaccine, I feel like I'm probably like to them, I'm an enemy because what I said was probably like really neutral towards both sides.
no, but I'm just saying like the people who are against like the just the normal round like polio vaccine or measles vaccine, or we'll say like hundreds of thousands of people die from it, and they'll just like say insane stuff about it. So it's kind of it's hard for me to really know who to believe, because I definitely don't believe the government, but the anti-vax movement on other issues. So it's like they might be right on this
Okay,
one.
so like let's put like the Zorro on about. So Zorro's saying that over 150,000 people have died from jabs. So if 150,000 people have died from jabs in America, right? That's terrible. 150,000 people have died from them, but haven't reportedly, according to the official statistics, 700,000 have died from the vaccine. So let's say that the vaccine was only or from from the vaccine, from the disease. So if if the disease was like exaggerated to be twice as many deaths, it would still be more people would still be dying of COVID than the vaccine. What I'm saying is that if you're younger and you're afraid you're going to die have side effects from the vaccine. You're vindicated. It's true. That is a thing that can happen. But a lot of people have also died from COVID. So it's kind of pick your poison.
Right. Also, it's yeah. Someone says it's so hard to know. Well, it's hard to know. Like, also in a lot of the cases, isn't it people with like diabetes or other potentially lethal illnesses who like
Yeah, most of the people are dying of pre-existing conditions, like the overwhelming majority.
so it could be people who die from the vaccine because of a pre-existing condition or people who die from COVID for a pre-existing condition. I mean, the US is kind of unique in terms of how unhealthy the population is.
Thanks, car culture.
I mean, I guess the population's not like North Korea where everyone's like a malnourished manlet, but everyone like population. I mean, Canada's bad too, but the US is like really bad. I think there might be a glimmer of hope in Omicron because it seems to have a very low um a lot of low fatality rate, but it's very contagious. Isn't that more like a traditional flu? Like a yearly
Mm-hmm.
flu or a yearly cold? Because if someone in the
Which
class,
it's evolved into.
yeah, because if someone in the class gets the flu or cold, like the rest of the class might get it, but it's the only people who normally die from that are people who have like an allergic reaction or who are immunocompromised or something like that.
Mm-hmm. You
So,
want to? Are we deep enough in the video to talk about the 2022 election in America?
sure. So, sorry, I just want to kind of finish up. So, as I said this, and I kind of like to get your take on it. So, my opinion on the vaccine is if you have a family or your work requires it, I think it's worth a throw of the dice to just get the vaccine um, rather than be unable to work, especially if you have a family to support. Also, even if it is dangerous, I don't think it's the hill to die on the way of someone coming to like cut your kid's dick off is. Because, I mean, I've looked into it from a Catholic perspective. EWTN, the Pope, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and the SSPX all said there was nothing explicitly against it in Catholic doctrine. So I think you can argue against it from a safety standpoint that the current state is illegitimate and they have no right to force something like this. But I don't think it's as intrinsic. It's intrinsically evil in the same way, like them taking your kids away because you won't cut their dicks off. Sorry if that was kind of long. What do you think about that general?
I basically agree with you. Such an exciting video. I just keep agreeing with him and just saying I agree with you or okay.
Oh, okay. Well, we kind of rep. I don't know. You and I both tend to be fairly. I don't think dispassionate's the right word, but like, or I don't know. I don't want to say big brained, but you and I tend to be pretty good at seeing things neutrally. Like you tend to be pro Russia, but you're Ukrainian. Um, Somebody says really going to be following the current pope. No, my point was that all the different people within the Catholic Church who despise each other agree on this. This is like one of the few things they agree upon. Maybe that's a bad sign, but I'm just saying. Um, so yeah, but sorry, I was saying, Serp, like your video on Ukraine, you're generally I associate you as being a pro Russia person, but you were very neutral in it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Almost you were almost more pro. You were almost kind of pro Ukraine in it, like you really did try to present it from their perspective, which I think is always important when you're doing any kind of history video. That even if you disagree with it, you should try to kind of present it from the perspective of the group you're talking about. But Like, I don't mean to jump a question on you, but if your current job said you have to get vaxxed or they'd fire you, what would you do?
Get vaxxed.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to kind of put you in that spot, but I think, I don't know.
I don't like, I'm acknowledging the danger of them, but I mean, even the position I have isn't. Most of the anti-vaxxers are more extreme than me.
So yeah, let's
I
look at,
don't think that it's an imminent death threat to everyone.
yeah. It also just might be because I know, like, when I became a Christian, I became less afraid of death than I was prior to becoming one. I'm honestly more afraid of being reduced to a situation when where I'm like living on the street and I'm not able to work than of dying. If that makes, do you know what I? Do you kind of get where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Or like being in prison and getting raped. Like, although I'm 6'1", so probably not as likely, but I'd probably rather be executed than that. Although, according to what our friend says, if you die while defending yourself from rape in prison, it's a form of martyrdom. So, um, no, because it apparently is. Um, but anyway,
You're
sorry.
protecting your virginity.
You're protecting your purity. I don't think you need to be a virgin even. You're just it's. But anyways, so to the election. So all actual signs, I would say, assuming that the election's completely
Can you
fair.
pull up a picture for
Of
me?
what? Yeah, sure.
Go to the Wikipedia page, 2022 Senate election, and then look up which seats are up for election.
So everything I've seen that's objective is that like it's going to be the Republicans are probably going to take both the House and the Senate.
Oh
Uh,
no, go and look at this Senate map for
I know. I'm just
2022. You
trying
need
to
to pull it
find
up
one.
right now before you say something as silly as that.
There. I tried to pull it up. I think that worked.
Okay, so you should notice that almost all the states that are up are red states, and every state that is up that's a blue state is an extreme hard blue state.
Right? Aren't there a number of red states with Democratic senators? Sorry, a number of that are there. Um,
Oh. No, so all those red states have senators that are up for re-election. All the bright ones are retiring senators. So you have a retiring senator in Oklahoma. No, not Oklahoma, sorry. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Those are all retiring. So since those are purple states, we should say it's probably going to be close elections there, except for there's some major cities in all of those, which some shenanigans might happen, especially like Pennsylvania. There are no states with retiring Democratic senators which look like enticing. There is one retiring Democratic senator, and he's in Vermont. So,
so what
which
is with
states do you
all
think there's
this?
going to be Republican gains in? Maybe Georgia, maybe Nevada, maybe Arizona,
I mean, I have to look
maybe,
at it.
maybe Colorado.
Yeah, you raise a good point. Just because I know, like, all the people who do election stuff is saying the Republicans are going to pick up 5 seats. I'm not really sure, like, where these would come from now that I think about it.
They're probably going to lose a seat in Pennsylvania. They're probably going to lose a seat in. They might lose it in Ohio, and I mean, Wisconsin seems kind of vulnerable. Like maybe Georgia's vulnerable for the
They all
Democrats.
seem to be in like states where there was shenanigans,
Hmm.
like Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania,
Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania.
Georgia. Um,
I think that the Democrats are going to gain an outright majority. Now, the thing with the House is that because um, the House is so much smaller, it's a lot harder to do shenanigans in the House.
I
So
think
the
Republicans
Republicans might gain a
control.
majority.
Well, Republicans control redistricting in most states,
Hmm.
from my
So,
understanding.
like, it's a lot fairer actually in the House than it is in the Senate because you can't do because they're not statewide campaigns. So big city shenanigans do a lot less damage. They're far more localized with the House.
Right. So I think the only I don't know. So I'm looking at another map. So I mean the only states the Republicans theoretically could pick up is yeah, Arizona, Nevada, maybe New Hampshire and Georgia are the only kind of purple
Maybe
states.
Colorado.
Yeah. Um so I'm trying to figure out where even is the 5 seats that people think they're going to pick up. Um
Uh, it would have to be Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. Is there two in Georgia?
I think there might be 2 in Georgia. Let me see. Because it worked so well the last time we had 2 seats in Georgia.
Yes,
Um,
but Ohio is already has a Republican senator, Constantine.
are there any vacant seats?
All the bright ones are retiring, so those will be vacant.
No, I mean
All the
vacant
light
before.
red and light blue are incumbents running.
Right. But as I was like, so I think there is a on the House level because I think districting is controlled at the state level, and Republicans control most of the state legislators. Let me just look that up.
Like it is a lot easier for them to gain in the House. For like New York, like it's Chuck Schumer's seat.
No, they're totally going to take Chuck Schumer's seat, 100%. I think they're also betting on low turnout, which might actually help. Okay, so looking at House control, um, yeah, so the Republicans control the legislature in most purple states. So they control redistricting in a lot. And yeah, so they control redistricting in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona. So most of them. They'll probably, I think they'll probably pick up in Nevada because Nevada's such a shit show at the moment.
So Arizona and Georgia were both shenanigan victories in special elections in 2020.
Right. Nevada's a Did you have you heard about what happened in Nevada?
Go ahead and tell me in the audience.
So the DSA won all the major leadership positions. So the entire party bureaucracy resigned, and the mayor of Las Vegas
Oh,
switched.
that's what they did.
So the Republicans might actually win. The Republicans might actually win the uh, it in the presidential election, assuming the presidential election was fair. But so do you think what's most likely is the Democrats will get a majority in the Senate, but the Republicans will retake the House?
I think it'll be the same thing that happened in 2018 that the Republicans will gain a mild majority in the House and then the Democrats will gain in the Senate.
Right. So you think the people who say they're going to win all the battleground states are just smoking meth?
I mean, what battle? Like, let's look at this realistically. So, so what? Where are the Democrats? Where are the Republicans going to gain? They're going to gain supposedly in Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the Democrats are probably going to gain in Pennsylvania. Um, you think they're going to gain in Wisconsin?
Uh, Sorry, didn't they already control Wisconsin?
Well, the Republicans control Wisconsin.
No, well, I mean, if it's a fair election, no. I feel like Wisconsin's almost like a lean Republican state at this point. Um, so,
Which is kind of like a not very appetizing Senate map for any real changes, I think.
so what do you think about the direction of the Republican Party at the moment?
They're trying to be really bland, like they're trying to be Republicans.
Oh, because I feel like they're shifting rightward on a lot of things.
Such as,
Well, more at the state level.
that's been an ongoing thing.
Oh, it has.
This is that people in the legislature and governors are more Republican than anybody that holds national office.
Oh, but it feels like they've been trending in that direction more since Trump.
Well, maybe.
Because you have actually had a number of big wins recently.
Just have to see. Maybe I'm just being blackpilled.
Um, so I think something to really watch for is if Texas. So basically, what wound up happening in Texas was Trump packed the circuit court there with right wing hacks, like not originalists, just like hacks. So they upheld the abortion law, and they will probably uphold the social media censorship law. I think if the social media censorship law actually comes into force, that actually will be a real on. That would actually be helpful. Do you know about the anti-social media censorship law?
Go ahead and describe it for me in the audience.
So basically, if you get banned off of a social media platform, you have the right to sue the company to get your name on, to get yourself unbanned, and they always pay the legal fees even if you lose.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think that could be pretty fun if that winds up coming into effect. I think the other thing you have to keep in mind, because people are saying I'm like delusional, is I live in Canada, so the Republican Party seems like an extreme right party to me.
So Americans are like, America's not based in the same thing that Poles say to Americans. Poles aren't based.
Yeah, because a lot of polls will tell me that Poland is more cucked than Canada is, and they'll say stuff like that, which is just not true, really. But so like what happened in Canada? So the narrative here is that what's his name? Peter O'Toole was too right wing, and that was the reason they lost the election. Uh, Andrew Scheer supposedly lost the election because he said that I'm personally pro life, but I won't do anything on it because it's a settled issue. And the narrative was that he lost because of that,
Rip.
which is an extremist position. Don't a lot of Democrats say that in the U.S.?
Yeah.
So it is kind of a matter of perspective. I think because I talk so much about American politics, people sometimes forget I come from a very different context. So maybe let's move further south. What's happening in Mexico at the moment?
Oh no, you're more prepared than me. Um, I haven't heard that much really. It doesn't seem like there's a very chaotic
I
atmosphere.
think things kind of settled down. Something that did happen under Trump is immigration, from my understanding, in the U.S. has dropped dramatically. I think he repealed some executive orders, and that in
It has
combination
to
with
do
COVID.
with you cannot. So a lot of Central Americans were being registered as refugees. Trump had this agreement and changed the law that the first country that you enter from the country you're exiting as a refugee, you have to register as a refugee there, and you can't walk through Mexico and then register as a refugee in America. So a lot of the declines have been because, say, like a woman in Guatemala would contend that she was a victim of domestic abuse, and then she would immigrate to the United States and then claim she was a refugee and then not even be considered an illegal immigrant, and so on. So now, um, Mexico is put on helping the United States prevent illegal immigration of Central Americans and other groups through Mexico.
Right. Because so that I think dramatically stopped it. I mean, that is something to Trump's credit, is he did end that particular thing. Um, okay, so going further south, do you want to maybe explain the Brazil situation? Just like the whole thing? Because I haven't really talked about it.
Okay, so it looks like Lulu's going to win, or Lula is out of prison. He's going to win a sweeping electoral victory in Brazil, and then he'll transform Brazil into Venezuela.
Okay, well, maybe give a bit more detail, go back a bit.
Okay, so Lula was president of Brazil from 2003 to 2010. He had some pretty far left policies, and eventually he was put into prison, and his successor was put into prison. And then them being put into prison has led to Bolsonaro's victory.
Because they aren't able to run again, right? If they're criminals.
So the Supreme Court is turned into a much more aggressive hierarchy than has ever been seen in the United States. So the Supreme Court, which originally imprisoned Lula, is now turned against Bolsonaro, and now the Supreme Court has like secret police that are imprisoning people for like defamation, and now they allow Lula to run again.
Yeah, because I my understanding is because he was impeached or on corruption charges or whatever, he was not permitted to run for president a second time,
Hmm.
further times.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has flipped everything that happened before, and now he's eligible to run for president again.
Yeah, solely because they don't like Bolsonaro.
And there's a this Bolsonaro may be put into prison by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is like acting unilaterally and has its own like secret police that are loyal to it, and that yeah.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court just hates Bolsonaro that much, so they've just completely. So they're bringing their champion. It's like a Marvel movie where like Lula's in prison or something, and then they go to like break him out of prison because he's the only one who can defeat Bolsonaro. I don't even know, has Bolsonaro even done anything as president of Brazil?
Um, he's allowed like the economy to grow, but then he got hit by COVID. He was cutting back on a lot of regulations,
Right.
and then he got hit by COVID, so the economy stopped growing. There's been various speculation that he was going to cross the Rubicon earlier this year, um, but he didn't. So the real question I think that's coming up is: will Bolsonaro cross the Rubicon, or will Lula be allowed to take power, and if Lula takes power, will Brazil become Venezuela?
Right. So isn't there something in the Brazilian constitution about military coups?
Can't they be? They can be retroactively legalized, I think, constitutionally.
Yeah, I think, from my understanding, if I read something like that. I think there's like some clause in it that if the people support it or something, then they can retroactively be legalized. I don't recall, but I think there is something in place for a situation like this.
Hmm.
I'm surprised there hasn't been a bigger refugee crisis from what's it called again, from Venezuela yet.
Well, it's destabilizing Colombia. There's
Right.
millions and millions of refugees from Venezuela and Colombia.
I think there also is in I don't know if it's Ecuador. I think Ecuador and Peru also have that issue
Hmm.
at the moment. So I think that's mostly what's going on in Latin America. What do you think is going to happen in Venezuela?
I think that Venezuela will. There's eventually going to be something like a civil war there. I mean, there's two opposing. There's like a government in exile. So
Doesn't most of the world recognize the government in exile?
a lot of countries do.
I mean, I keep thinking it's going to collapse, but it never seems to actually collapse.
I mean, it just gets worse and worse every year. I mean, there was a coup in Bolivia, wasn't there?
Yeah, but
To
then
force Moros out of power.
and then he just came back to power.
Did he? I didn't know he came back.
I don't know if it was him, but someone from his party just won re-election. Because I mean, the coup was kind of pointless because he had overwhelming support from the populace. So I don't really know what the how they thought the thing was gonna go, but it didn't really go anywhere. So and that kind of brings us back to on the topic of crossing the Rubicon. Do you want to maybe explain the Turkey situation to the audience?
Okay, so Erdogan has collapsed the Turkish economy. The Turkish currency, the lira, is entering hyperinflation directly due to his policies. Apparently, he believes that it's part of the Islamic religion that interest rates should be low. Like he believes unorthodox views of economics that low interest rates prevent inflation, and that hiring interest rates would cause inflation. So over the past few years, he's been aggressively lowering interest rates, which has caused the Turkish economy and the lira to collapse. When he came to power, many Turks believed that Turkey would emerge and become as economically powerful as like France or Britain or Germany. While over his tenure, they've declined. He has, of course, intervened in the Syrian civil war. He's helped Azerbaijan conquer large parts of Armenia. He's intervened in Libya, and he's kind of situated himself as this neo-Ottoman. At the same time, he originally was prime minister, and he's constitutionally reshaped Turkey into being a presidential republic. And it's kind of up in the air how much Turkey is a democracy and how much of it is a dictatorship under Erdogan. Now, Erdogan, in the previous election, the opposition party made gains. And because he collapsed the economy, if there were an election today, many people believe he would lose. But one wonders if he would willingly give up power, and that's where crossing the Rubicon comes in. Is will Erdogan centralize his own power now that he's having these hiccups? Would he accept a election that would delegitimize his power base, or is Turkey already swapped into the point where it's no longer a truly democratic system?
I mean, there's a couple different ways it could go. It could go with the just mass election fraud. It could be he could do an auto coup, um, and just
Many people already saw the 2016 coup as essentially a kind of like a reverse auto coup, where he deliberately organized it so he could purge the army.
yeah, he might be getting ready to do like a coup in support of himself. I mean, there's always a chance that someone in the military could remove him. I'd say the situation is just extremely unstable there.
Hmm. But it's very unclear if he's a dictator or if he's still like a democratically elected leader, and
Uh,
that if he could truly be recalled.
I think the situation seems very similar to Russia in a lot of ways, such as the changing of the form of government to be whatever is in the short term more.
Advantageous to
Yeah,
Erdogan.
so like it switches from being a parliamentary to a presidential system, um, solely on the basis of what's better in the short term. I don't know if Turkish economy collapses. I wonder if that'll lead to another refugee crisis.
But if the I don't think Turkey's like internally unstable.
That's not what I mean. There's a lot of people in northern Syria who are dependent upon economic aid from
Oh,
Turkey,
you're saying that these people will flee out of Turkey
or Turkey will
into the
expel
West?
them.
Hmm. So you think it could revitalize the Syrian civil war?
No, I think it could be another refugee because I was looking at this a bit earlier. So, from my understanding, the currency that's mostly used in uh, northern Syria is lira, which has become functionally useless. So, if I think there's a lot of refugees living in Turkey, so they might be the first ones to go. Turkey might just dump them all off into Europe as a way to save money as their economy implodes.
I could see that. They would basically pull a Belarus.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's possible or not. That's just kind of my immediate thought as something Turkey might do.
It's very unclear because Erdogan is somebody that's very. He's not a long term thinker. He's very good at doing things in the immediate, which will benefit him. But he doesn't really seem to have some kind of grand plan.
Right, like a grand plan to. So,
Like have another Ottoman Empire. It's like he does these little things that will help him immediately, but he never like builds any true project that will like benefit Turkey 10 years down the line or something.
so I think part of that was Turkey kind of had a dramatic change in its foreign policy when the U.S. snaked on them over the Syrian civil war.
Mm-hmm.
Because Turkey was historically, and I think you're more knowledgeable about this than I am,
A
but
bulwark against Russia in the Middle East.
yeah, because weren't they extremely like pro NATO?
I mean, they're probably the most important NATO ally outside of Britain for America.
And they kind of got thrown under the bus in favor of the Kurds.
In favor of the communist Kurds.
I mean, who cares? Like, the Kurds are irrelevant, but I guess the Kurds are like more paused, so they decided
We
to.
want to do like a roundup of other things,
I
and
just
then we'll talk about the economy, and then we'll talk about global trends. Or is there anything else you want
there's
to talk
one
about?
more thing before we get to that. China and Taiwan.
I don't think China can. I don't think they have a navy to do it, so I don't think they're going to do it.
I think it's a meme. I think the Chinese Navy's a meme because I do see a lot of people LARP that like China is going to overtake the U.S. in naval power. Um, China doesn't really even have a navy.
They
Don't.
do have a navy, but it's mostly dedicated to being like the Coast Guard.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think anyone comes close to the sheer number of carriers that the U.S. has.
I don't know if carriers are that important still, but
But the U.S. does just has a huge navy. Um, and I think it would
mhm.
be very difficult to
Don't
get
know
to
if
match it.
China's navy could really challenge Japan's navy, let alone the U.S.
I'd say they're probably similar in power. I'd have to look at it. China does have the advantage of a huge number of land-based aircraft and land-based missile systems, which might even it up a bit. But
I've seen just the facts video on Erdogan, John, not real name. Sorry
so
to cut you off.
you said that just in the list you sent me. Do you want to talk about the Chinese housing market?
I wanted to talk about some other stuff before we get to the global economy, because
Okay.
I think that that the civil war is going to get worse and worse, and that Ethiopia will basically become Somalia and collapse indefinitely. I don't think that the Tigray can reunite Ethiopia again.
Well, there's already been a lot of parts of Ethiopia that have seceded over the years. Like there was Eritrea. I think there was some other part of it.
I wonder how much Egypt has to do with this Ethiopian civil war. Apparently, people say on Wikipedia it doesn't, but in case you didn't know, Ethiopia was going to dam the Nile, which would have caused a water crisis in Egypt, which could have resulted in the greatest refugee crisis in known history. But Ethiopia has now entered into like a horrible war, civil war, where the central government's likely going to collapse soon.
It's funny because it was one of the countries where the Communist Party just renamed itself after the Berlin Wall fell.
Yeah.
My favorite one is still Cambodia, where they became a conservative party and restored the monarchy. So I do also. Oh, right, Djibouti. That's the other part. I do find that like the historical troll of not letting Ethiopia have access to the ocean is pretty funny, because literally the entire coast is just random breakaway states.
Well, if the Tigray become their own country, then they'll be even further from the coast
Mm-hmm.
because they're on the border with Atreida.
I think their religious demographics are also yeah, because it's 2/3 Christianity, 1/3 Islamic, which is a very unstable uh, mixture. So, okay, so what was the next thing? Was it the
I think Pope Francis is going to die soon.
Oh, you do think so?
Yeah.
Do you think he's gonna do like a rash of executive degrees or whatever they're called in Catholicism before he goes?
Papal bulls.
Yeah.
I think that the banning of the Latin Mass was that. I think that he's basically trying to create himself a legacy through the banning the Latin Mass. And I think that he's going to die within 2022. Now, who will succeed him? I think it'll be somebody who won't be as left wing, I guess you could say, as Francis. And that the church will probably, I mean, you're not going to get some heroic young popes type pope, Pius the 13th out of him, but I think he'll be better than Francis.
Well, I feel like Francis's legacy is gonna be horrible, because he didn't really accomplish much of what the left wanted.
Well, I mean, it's someone. it's very entrenched. Like, it's impossible because, I mean, he made John Paul II a pope, or he made John Paul II a saint, and now all these things that the left opposes are infallibly decreed by this Pope Saint. So
I feel like he tried to gaslight I feel like the Amazon Synod was his attempt to gaslight everybody at the same time. Because his surrogates promised all this like insane shit, and he didn't deliver on any of it. Um, and then
listen to like Michael Matt or any of those like Taylor Marshall and anybody, you feel like the church is going to collapse at any second. And if you just ignore them, it seems like it's all just smoke that's just being blown up to blackmail people.
it is kind of fear. Well, I mean, it is kind of, even if they're right about a lot of things, they are. It is kind of fear porn and uh, stuff like that. Conspiratainment, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer Absolute Defender. My opposition or my indifference to genetic engineering has to do with Edward Dutton's. He has a very dim view of genetic engineering, and I kind of defer to Edward Dutton on everything when it comes to hereditary intelligence and so on. And then Patriarch Bartholomew is probably going to die in 2022 as well.
Um,
Constantine.
is it explicitly banned by the church?
What is?
Genetic
Oh,
engineering?
artificial contraception, or
No, genetic engineering.
yeah, NFP is, or not NFP. What do you call it when you take an egg and you artificially inseminate it in a lab?
Artificial
Test,
insemination.
but I mean, like, test tube babies are banned. So
Right.
not NFP. Sorry, that was pretty setty of me.
I thought you said NFT there for a minute.
Ooh, I'm pretty tired, by the way, so I've probably made a lot of mistakes. But
Oh, that's fine. Okay, so you wanted to talk about, was it the economy?
yeah, do you want to talk about the global economy now?
Sure, you probably are more knowledgeable about this than I am, so.
So the
Uh,
United States is entering a period of stagflation. The second largest housing company basically in China has just collapsed. So it appears that the Chinese housing market is going to collapse. I mean, both Argentina and Turkey, I believe, are entering hyperinflation. The US is entering stagflation. I think every country is entering inflation. So it seems that we're entering something that's worse than 2008.
because
I
I
mean,
don't recall that causing hyperinflation.
the housing crisis causing
Yeah, I
hyperinflation?
don't remember it causing much inflation in general, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it caused inflation, but it was subsumed slowly. But the thing about it is that all the housing stuff that caused the US economy to go backwards is happening in China. At the same time that you have all this inflationary crises and supply shortages, there's also a creeping global energy shortages. A lot of countries are having, sweeping blackouts or whatever.
Is that from a lack of oil or supply chain
Oil,
issues?
natural gas, supply chain issues. Um, I think natural gas is actually the big problem here.
Is that because of Russia or?
In China, it's getting particularly bad. Um, it has to do with leaving coal, switching to intermittent resources, Russia, um, and the nature of extracting fossil fuels itself with natural gas and oil is that you can't, um, and you can't just turn the tap back on for those.
Right. Okay, so the housing market's collapsing in China. Um, so they always talk about the supply chain issues. I wonder when we're actually going to see it because I've never really seen that like on the shelves at a store I've been to, like them just being out of things. I wonder when that'll actually start happening.
Um, we'll just have to see, because it's like it's like shaking. It's not collapsed.
Right. So it
The
might.
real supply chain issue is the shortage of computer microchips.
Right. So you're saying it might just limp along for a while.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's
Okay,
so
so power technology. So 20 provinces and regions have struggled to cope and have having power restrictions. This is more than affects more than 66% of the country's gross domestic product. This is in China.
right. Did I haven't seen much. Did COVID do a lot of damage to China's economy?
Well, yeah, it hurt their export market.
Well, also they kind of shut everything down, and there was just all the other
Well, I think
insanity.
Australia has stopped trading coal with China as well, so that's contributing to their crisis.
Well, I guess if China's economy collapses, that'll be the real supply chain issues.
China economy weak.
Well, it'll be China economy poor, um,
Oh, okay.
but so yeah, I guess everything's just gonna limp along economically for the next year or so. I guess it depends how bad COVID is and stuff like that.
So I don't know. I feel like this video probably wasn't particularly exciting.
I think we
I'm
covered
sorry.
no, we covered a lot of stuff. There wasn't a ton of digressions. We got through basically the entire world. I think that's a good place, unless you had anything else you wanted to say.
Do you want to talk about what you think the global trends over the next decade are going to be and how these things are
Sure.
going to feed into it?
You want to talk
I
about
think
resource
that
depletion over the next decade?
I think that that's coming slowly. I was going to talk about I think that Europe is remilitarizing. I think that the whole Russia thing is causing in the Belarus border crisis with Poland. Europe is slowly remilitarizing, and that the European Union is either going to shrink back. I don't think that there's going to be. I think that the European Confederation model is kind of dead in the water, and that as the US leaves, the EU will make less and less sense because there won't be one single army which kind of unifies the whole continent. And with Russia as an existential threat, this will cause Ukraine and Poland, obviously, to build bigger militaries, and this will move westward, and that Europe will be remilitarized as the U.S. declines in power. And with the remilitarization of Europe, the EU will eventually just disappear.
Right.
Um, as far as the Middle East goes, I think that whether or not it's Erdogan, eventually Turkey will probably become restore itself as the prime power in the Middle East. I don't know if I don't think that I would think that the Arabs hate Iran more than they hate Turkey.
Right.
And then Africa is going to be a complete basket case, like hell on earth.
Like always.
Yeah, China's slamming into the middle income trap with a vengeance. Um, and India is just going to be India, their own little world.
Mm-hmm. Well, that seems to always more or less be the case.
And then America's pulling back and it's going to become just another Latin American country. And Canada, as America's hat's going to become the same.
Right. Well, we're gonna probably become a Chinese colony. I mean, we already kind of are more so than a Latin American country.
Well, Australia's really a Chinese colony.
Hmm.
It's pretty bad there.
Okay, well, I think we covered anything. Was there anything else you wanted to add in?
Uh, do you want to play Twilight Struggle?
Uh, Maybe some other time. I have some other stuff I need to do.
My heart is broken. Are we ever gonna stream it for them?
Maybe some point. Anyways, man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Okay, I really appreciate you having me.
Okay, go check out Serp's channel, guys. He's been putting up some good stuff lately. It'll probably make you want to drink bleach, but it's good stuff. Anyways, God bless everyone.